to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that is perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I am your host tonight, and I am joined by two fellow Infinity Bros. Number one, in your hearts, and the first one I'm announcing is Zayne Ellis.
Yes, got it.
It's part of the bit. I gotta announce Zayne first every time he's on the podcast now. Max probably won't hold to that bit. He doesn't get the bit. So
Max is lame.
Zayne, welcome to the pod. It's good to have you back, man.
Thanks. Good to be here. Spooky month, October.
Spooky.
It's the best.
Yeah.
It's my time of year.
Times. Yes. Also, another person who enjoys this time of year is our good friend and Infinity Bro, Mark Jones.
I am also another person, so I'm glad to be here.
That is accurate. He is another person.
It's Mark, the other person, Jones, here in your ears.
Mark, the other guy.
The other guy.
The other guy, Jones.
From parts unknown.
Maybe you could have picked a more interesting name than Mark Jones, and then maybe you would be announced.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry about that.
When
I landed here, I only knew two things. That was Mark Jones,
Yeah, there it is. Welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast. We are going to be talking a few different things, namely She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night. But we do want to mention that there's plenty of Patreon content on some horror and spooky movies and some other things as well. So if you're interested in some other things, yes, which will not be named on the Infinity Bros podcast at this moment. But if you are interested in joining the Infinity Bros Patreon for $2 a month to get access to uncut episodes, make sure you check out the link in the show notes. You can also check out the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube. I feel like the list of stuff that we're on just keeps growing and growing these days. And now you can check out our full video episodes on YouTube as well. So make sure you go check out our YouTube to see Zayne's lovely face, because
yes.
I mean, who wouldn't want to see that sitting in his dark Sith lair? So
it's true.
Yeah,
I'm a hot commodity.
Hot commodity. We've got lots of big things going on at the Infinity Bros. You can check out theinfinitybros.com for Zayne's bio. Definitely some big things going on there. But yeah, so we're going to be reviewing She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night tonight. So the first thing we're going to talk about, guys, we're going to dive right into it because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. But we're going to be talking about She-Hulk. And for those new listeners, we have a very specific rating system on the Infinity Bros podcast. So we're going to tell you about right here.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an infinity step.
So guys, I want to talk about She-Hulk first because I think we're gonna talk about that a little bit less because we're very excited about Werewolf by Night that just dropped last week. So She-Hulk, I want to get your guys, before we dive full into spoilers, I want to get just a quick 60-second review of episode 8 of She-Hulk. Zayne, go ahead.
Episode 8 just kind of keeps going where the series has been going. It just keeps with the kind of the situational, the sitcom feeling of like, hey, we're just going to keep ratcheting this up. We're going to keep, the same feel that we've had for all 8 episodes, and we're going to bring in a well-loved character and it just, yes, Frogman. It's just like,
indeed, yes,
just gonna keep up the zany antics that this show has presented us, and I'm all for it.
You pulled out the zany adjective. Wow, that's, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything else from Zayne.
I imagine when Zayne says and would spell zany, he would spell it with his name and then with a Y at the end.
With a Y at the end, yeah.
Do you think when he's making his Tinder profile, he puts zany as one of the adjectives that describes him?
I don't know why he wouldn't. That's just like a shoehorn in way to a relationship.
That's just easy money. That's easy pickings right there.
All right, Mark, what did you think of episode 8 of She-Hulk?
I think this one might be one of the top episodes I've watched. Probably give it a good 5.75 out of 6 for this episode. I liked the action that we actually finally got. It feels like she was finally in her super suit. Frogman, or a version of it, appears. What else do we get? The one and only finally comes. That's what she said. And literally and figuratively, the two-way term for specifically this episode. And that was totally unintentional. Sorry for the pun. And
Max will probably not think so, but
Max might laugh. That's what's funny about that when he edits this. Or no one will hear this and only hear this part to make me look like a fool, because Max is good at that.
True.
Overall, yeah, like Zane said, it's like the situational comedy that is, I feel like it's working. I see a lot of hate online where like, oh, Rotten Tomatoes gives this like an 87%. It's like, I don't know who's watching this and like not having a good time. Except for maybe my wife, but we'll dive. Yeah. She had some good opinions I want to bring up. I feel like from the female perspective that I think is missed by some of us, but yeah.
Yes. I think you've brought some of her insight on previous episodes that I think is as well appreciated and shared by a lot of people watching the show. So, but I agree with both of you guys. I think honestly, this is the best episode of the series so far to me. I absolutely love this episode. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 6. It was just fantastic, super fun to watch. Like you guys said, the guest appearances, fantastic. We'll dive a little bit more into it with the spoilers, but honestly, I love this episode. Absolutely. And I think I was super pumped about the show coming into it. I started to fall off a little bit because of just like the sitcom-y nature. And it just felt like things weren't really wrapping together. But this episode brought me fully back in. Like, I absolutely love this episode. I think it's the best one of She-Hulk so far, and I'm really excited for the finale next week. So, all right, guys, this is your spoiler warning. We're going to be diving full into spoilers for She-Hulk, episode 8 and the series. And I might as well just say we're going to be spoiling Werewolf by Night now as well. So if you haven't watched that, go ahead and listen to the rest of the She-Hulk review and then skip the rest of the Werewolf by Night review that we're going to be giving later. So
this is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler warning.
Daredevil came back. Charlie Cox, we finally got him back as Daredevil. What did you guys think of this portrayal of Daredevil in this series? Mark, go ahead.
So I just want to be clear. This Daredevil is not the Daredevil from the Netflix series, right? Or is that still up in the air? Like, has Daddy Feige told us this is not Netflix?
So
Daredevil?
It's been kind of ambivalent, and it's been like confirmed by online sources that this is...
Trust me, bro, guys,
that this is canon to the MCU, or the Netflix shows are canon to the MCU. Kevin Feige says that it's the same Daredevil. That's about how far as he'll go.
Okay.
He doesn't straight up say those shows are canon to the MCU. So at this point, it's still up for debate, I think. I personally think they probably are canon, but it's like hard to give solid proof of that right now.
Because that's my big thing with Daredevil being back. Is like, I want all the stuff that I watched, all the time I gave to Daredevil for the Netflix series, I want that to be still, still in the same timeline, or like that's the guy. Like his same backstory as the guy who showed up in She-Hulk. That's what I kind of want. But overall, yes, I'm glad he's back. I love that, it was going to be the yellow and red suit, because that's one of my favorite suits that he wears. And it just seems, I don't know how to put it. Like, yeah, I was just, I was super pumped. I was, even my beautiful wife Kelly were watching. She's like, "Oh, he's back," and I was like, "Yeah, you mean finally, they told us
Finally, exactly.
He's going to be in 5 episodes, and literally,
I put out a
one.
TikTok literally like 5 episodes ago because on IMDb at the time it said that he was appearing in 6 episodes. Like they totally pulled the wool over my eyes. I thought he was going to be appearing way earlier in the series and
unless
become
we're
like a
getting more
recurring role.
episodes of She-Hulk.
Maybe. just surprise drop 5 episodes or 6 episodes of She-Hulk after the fact. Oh my gosh, that would be wild.
But I really back to Daredevil and Matt Murdock. I really loved how he shows up late, like that's so I feel like so meta, like yeah, I wasn't here right away, guys, but now I'm here, so like let's get the show on the road type of a situation. That's how I felt it. It felt like
right.
like the whole like, oh, the driver got lost. I think maybe the driver was Kevin Feige, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Like that, and like I love the connection they went right into it with him and She-Hulk and Jen Walters. Just like the relationship I think we all need and want right now, because we're kind of missing that. Like that's literally everyone in the last handful of characters like don't have like a loved one or a partner anymore, because like they died.
Right.
They broke up. They're no longer like in the universe.
Yeah.
So, it's great stuff. I mean, I wish, just going right at the end, I wish they wouldn't have hooked up. I didn't like that. Like, I kind of wish they kind of fostered that relationship more. Like they actually like, they went like, oh, we had a spark. And,
right.
That's just, and then now Matt Murdock has to go to confession. Confess his sins for having premarital sex with Jennifer Walters. So he'll be absolved, but not Jennifer Walters, I'm assuming, because she doesn't have that ability
to absolve sins. That's not what I've heard is on her power set. So
I do love that they set up a potential villain for She-Hulk though, with the Frogman, and knowing that he has money in his background. So I feel like he's gonna show back up with a way better techie suit, and might pose an issue for She-Hulk down the road. So I love that aspect, that Frogman could come back. So right. And we were teased with a freaking hallway fight that just got smashed, literally.
I actually I thought that was kind of hilarious how they did that, just because this is her show, so the way that she just disrupted that whole scene was perfect in my opinion. Zane, what did you think of Daredevil coming back and She-Hulk?
Yeah, it was good to see that character. Like, I mean, obviously we had Matt Murdock kind of within No Way Home, and we've had those instances, but it was nice to actually see him as Daredevil and actually kind of get that back in, to have him come into an episode. And it's like, not only did we get an episode of Daredevil and fighting, but you also had Matt Murdock and lawyering going on, which was fun, even though it was totally based on oh yeah, here's this idiot client who's tried to sue someone over something petty and dumb, and you're just like, oh, okay. But no, it was fun to see. It's something that we've been teased for as long as we have. I wish it would have done a little more of fostering that relationship between Jen and Matt a little bit more than just going right into it. That was kind of a weird, or even the post afterwards, him doing the walk of shame, holding his boots. It was just kind of I get it, but you're I that's not really what I want to see out of Daredevil. He's supposed to be wearing the suit at night and stuff, not just out in the middle of the day doing the walk of shame in it. Go back to dressing like a lawyer.
And assuming people might see him and recognize him, be like, why is he in LA?
Which also could be part of it too, of why, because he's in LA, going the whole West Coast type thing that's, the suit is different because it's the yellow and red. So maybe that's what part of it is. It's just hey, I'm going to be a little more cavalier because I'm not in Hell's Kitchen right now.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true. That could be a part of it. So personally, I loved pretty much everything about him in this episode, except for what you guys already mentioned is the hooking up with She-Hulk. I think, again, I don't have a problem with
hooked up
Matt
with
Murdock.
Jen Walters.
Well, yeah, Jen Walters. It just, man, I don't have a problem with him hooking up with people because he did that in the Netflix series as well. But like,
did he do that? I like because
he did it with. Didn't he do it with Elektra? And he did it with. I thought he did it with. He didn't do it with Karen Page at any point, did he? No,
I thought it was just Elektra, and at that point, like they had a relationship.
Right,
so
they had like an actual relationship.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like, that's where I agree with you guys. I think it should have been like him, building that relationship first, because that's what Daredevil is. Like, he doesn't really take things like lightly, like he takes things seriously. On the other hand, he is basically a man whore in the comics. So like that aspect of it,
good guy.
Okay. Like, I'll give him that. Like, that's fine. But yeah, I think it would have been nice if they had put a little bit more, and it's tough because these episodes are so quick. They're like 20 minutes long. So like, how do you build that relationship? The easiest answer would be don't do it in one episode. Like, stretch it over 2-3 plus episodes. But yeah, that was the only aspect of it that I was like, not really a fan of that. Absolutely loved him walking in to the courtroom as Matt Murdock and just obliterating She-Hulk and her client. That was fantastic. And this is my main gripe with this whole series, is that we got kind of advertised a Ally McBeal like lawyering show, and the lawyering has been like a sprinkle of what we're going on. I think it's focusing more, and I understand why they're doing this, but they're focusing more on Jennifer Walters and her internal struggle with being She-Hulk. And that makes sense. Like, this is the She-Hulk show. But I don't know. I expected a little bit more of the lawyering aspect of it. So seeing Matt Murdock and her face off, that was fantastic. I want more of that for sure.
So one thing that Kelly brought up while watching this, and I had also some shared opinions on that, where it's like Jen Walters, we kind of got in the series as like a good lawyer. But I think when she's been She-Hulk, she's not the best of lawyers, because that was a big question. It's like, why didn't she? Because the reason why they're in the courtroom is because Frogman, has a rich father who, is part of this, uses them as attorneys. Like, uses jet fuel is what we find out. And like, why didn't she go? You would think she would have done her research and asked these questions to figure this out before going to Jacobson.
Yeah.
And instead of having, like, this is what frustrates me in a lot of shows I've been watching. No one can have a freaking civilized conversation. It's just like everyone goes in hot and heavy, and I don't know. It's just something about like literally him and the costume guy. She and him could have figured that out and be like, oh, right. Here's the issue. Yeah, we can just throw this case out. Didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Which then because then Kelly was saying how she's actually the worst character as like a person, because she's so. Like when she kind of said this stuff, it's like, it makes sense. Like, it's either she grew up so smart that she didn't develop like a good personality and like how to like function socially, because she's also kind of awkward, but then also she's kind of like standoffish as a person, but they're very self-absorbed at the same time, which then doesn't foster well with She-Hulk. And then my theory has been is her being as She-Hulk as the attorney is like whatever like affects Bruce and the Hulk being two separate like identities. Is that affecting her long term being in the She-Hulk form? Because that kind of hinted really heavy at the end of this episode. Right, at the end of the
episode, exactly. Like she definitely seemed to kind of disassociate the Jen Walters identity from the She-Hulk identity towards the end of that episode a little bit. So definitely, you might be onto something there, Mark, for sure.
Which was something I thought of that too, I think it's going to tie back to that first episode, because like you kind of went through it. I remember a lot of people online talked about it, but just how Bruce was so much of just like, hey, it's important to control this stuff once you become a superhero, like you're a Hulk now, like it's important. And then you got the whole thing, and she run off, does her own thing. I think it's going to tie back to this of showing that her loss of control might be different than how Bruce's was, but like it's ultimately going to play that back around of being like, hey, this is why you need to remain in control, because one instance of messing up and you're viewed as a monster. And we just had that at the end of that episode of her one mess up, and now everyone's reaction to it.
But it was them showing a sex tape of hers. That's what we're assuming that they were going to show. And and they're dudes in the back with masks on who are clearly like part of that group, that online group, and she has one of them, and they just let that dude run away. At the end, when she like busts out, like she grabs one of them, and she has all. This is going back into the weeds. I feel I would not be surprised, if either the firm she's a part of is a part of this, or whoever put on this gala is a part of this. Because it seems too weird that all this setup was there and no one could just turn off all the monitors right away. And clearly they were working the monitors. So like that's where it's like, I think we're going to find in this last episode a lot more, a lot more people are involved than I think what we initially thought.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, I mean, that brings us to, we already have talked about the end of the episode here. Hulk King is the person behind all of this. Who is the Hulk King? And is it a character that we've seen already? Is it a totally new character? And what the heck is going to happen in the finale of She-Hulk, Zane?
I don't even know. I like,
there's not been a whole lot of like clues as to who this person is.
The only thing that would make sense, because of the fact that, especially with everything with the blackmail and getting all this information, all this stuff, the only thing that would make sense is if it's the leader. Because the leader just becomes obsessed with the Hulk. He can't get Bruce, so what would be the next best thing to go after? She-Hulk. And so, like, the leader would be smart enough to, send the low-budget wrecking crew to send all these different things, and then, slowly figure out of like, hey, that's not going to work. All right, how do you go after someone who's, has invulnerable skin? Well, you got to get them when they're in their human form. And how do you attack this person? Well, you don't physically attack them. You attack them, mentally or their character. Or so part of me feels like Hulk King you could get appearance of the leader here.
Interesting. Mark, what do you think about Hulk King?
I mean, Zane kind of just took the words out of my mouth with the leader.
Right.
So I'm going to go in a different route.
I think it's possible just because she's also going to be in legal trouble with destroying all this stuff.
Emil Blonsky might be involved somehow.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you think this whole peace and love thing that he's doing is a farce?
I think it's all a mirage. I think it's all a farce. And I hope I'm wrong. Because eventually he's got to get into Thunderbolts. You would think if he's a part of that or the enemy of Thunderbolts.
True.
But man, the leader is such a good, that's introduced the leader back. So then he becomes, a villain for New World Order, which would be perfect for, this online group of, faux AQAnon people. So that's what it kind of seems like. But man, do we get someone we've seen before, or do we get a brand new villain? Or is it someone we've seen that becomes a villain? So that's, very hitting all the bases to make sure I.
Yeah, I love that. Two very different but very intriguing theories we've got here in the Infinity.
It's Mephisto.
Obviously it's Mephisto. Why? What am I thinking?
Obviously.
Do you think Daredevil shows back up for this last episode? Because we're assuming he made a flight back to New York the next day.
Right.
Maybe he comes back to represent her in court and, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Who knows?
Had to come back to this because this spot. I don't remember if it was this last episode or the episode before. I think it was this last one where they talked. Yeah, it was this last one where they said the Accords were dropped. Like, what a subtle, like what happened for them to just drop all that?
Yep. I absolutely love that they just subtly dropped that in and just were like, all right, there it is.
Yep. The Accords are no more. It's anymore. Like, well, what happened? Yeah. What happened where they're like, yeah, superheroes can claim their anonymity. And
it was obviously a terrible idea, as evidenced by every, Civil War piece of material that's ever come out from Marvel. So
yeah.
Team Cap.
Do you think Hulk shows back up? That's the other question.
That is a good question. I don't think so. I think he's gone. He's in space now. Like, I don't think we'll even be able to contact him. He's gearing up for World War Hulk in like 2026. So,
Right.
Do we get? I just wanted to. Do we get an Avenger? But there's not really a lot. But I would say, do we get another known?
The Avengers,
hero,
they're kind of in shambles right now. Like
they're like
we gotta have a regrouping. Disassembled, exactly.
Okay, but like, do you think we get another character we've seen back? Does White Vision show up? What are the chances of
White Vision show up? I hope so, because I would be very interested to see where that would be going. Oh my gosh. I think honestly the most likely is Daredevil coming back to be a part of this episode. Who else could like even be a part of this without it being totally like shoehorned in?
Oh, well,
I don't know.
One that comes to my mind because it's Oakland, so that's close enough. It'd be Riri Williams, right? But I don't know how you shoot her. I don't know how you like push her into this.
Yeah, right.
But
like,
she might have a prototype suit to fight if She-Hulk is hulking.
Right.
So
yeah, that's what's so interesting about this episode is that like I mean I mentioned that we don't really know much about the Hulk King. Like usually how these Marvel shows go is it comes back to a person that they've known in their past. It's a person.
Carter.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Sharon Carter. Maybe she's
it comes back to a person that's been in the series running the whole time with them. There doesn't really seem to be a person in the series that it really could be. So unless they pull something really crazy out and it's like Nikki or something like that. But like, I don't know. I don't know who it could be, honestly.
Hold on. So you guys, the Infinity Bros universe, Nikki's her like friend who's like
diving into the weeds.
Right. That's who Nikki is. If I'm remembering right, like her friend. Yeah. There's a lot like I'm gonna get really real deep into the weeds.
Here we go.
But just some of the shots they had with her and the way her Julie was wearing. Anyways, she wore a lot of black. There was sometimes her necklace, that's a star, was upside down, looked like a pentagram. Not saying Mephisto, but I'm saying she could be a bad person. And
there has been multiple times in the season where she has looked at the camera as in fourth person, but she hasn't spoken to the camera. And I think we even had that in WandaVision with Agatha, right? She looked at the camera a few times as well.
Well, because she knew what was going. Yeah, when when Agatha was doing it
all. So there's that element of maybe she knows something else is going on, or maybe it's totally an optical illusion, maybe it's Pug.
I was saying, if it's Pug, I'm gonna riot. I'm gonna riot if it's Pug.
He didn't get those Iron Man 3s.
Pug is a great man. Don't you dare say that about Pug.
He was stuck with Avengers t-shirts.
Oh my gosh. Well, guys, let us know who you think Hulk King is. You can hook up the Infinity Bros universe on Discord to chat weekly about all of this stuff, or just hit us up on social media. Tell us who you think Hulk King is and get geared up for the finale of She-Hulk next week.
Look, I get it. You're lazy, and coffee from the grocery store is just as good as ordering from somewhere like Mini World's Tavern, right? Wrong! That's dumb, and you should feel so dumb for thinking that. Does your local grocery store donate a portion of their proceeds to charity? Actually, if they do that, that is kind of awesome. But we guarantee that Mini World's Tavern does that. Besides, it's not like your grocery store provides an amazing monthly blend with added RPG-themed bonuses. That's a limited edition Mini World's Tavern exclusive, baby. They are the online coffee brand that's perfect for game night. Guys, I should know. Before every podcast and every time I go live on Twitch, I fill an entire bathtub full of Great Old One, and I do my best Lord Harkonnen impression. Guys, grab a bag for yourself right now. Go to www.miniworldstavern.com/theinfinitybros, all one word. And guess what? You're going to save yourself 10% at checkout.
All right, guys, it is time to dive into Werewolf by Night. Man, this was a trip. Okay,
so much fun.
Read a short I'm going to read a short synopsis here. On a dark and somber night, a secret cabal of monster hunters emerge from the shadows and gather at the foreboding Bloodstone Temple following the death of their leader. In a strange and macabre memorial to the leader's life, the attendees are thrust into a mysterious and deadly competition for a powerful relic, a hunt that will ultimately bring them face to face with a dangerous monster. So this is based on the Werewolf by Night comic by Marvel Comics, which Moon Knight made his first appearance in, actually. So Jarrett's got a little bit of investment in this, and they're calling it a Marvel Studios special presentation. Dropped on Disney Plus on yesterday, October 7th, and it's 54 minutes long. It says on here, dropped to great reviews, 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, guys, with an audience score of 94% so far. Like, pretty much loved across the board. Like, if you compare that to any Marvel project, I mean, it's up there. It's probably top 10, honestly, in scoring in the MCU, which is pretty impressive. So, yeah, a lot of really awesome things going on about this series. We already put a spoiler warning out there, so if you haven't watched this, make sure you go do that and then come back and listen to our review. Guys, let's just go ahead and say your rating and just a quick thoughts. Zane will go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, so just quick rating on this, just 6 out of 6. Like, I didn't really know what to expect coming into this, but like the way they captured the homage and the way this made like an old school monster movie was so well done. But not only does it capture all those feelings of these old monster movies, but it was also like a modern feeling as well. And so like they kind of did a really good job of blending like both worlds, both feelings. Like it was so cool that they gave it this one shot, this special. Like, I think this is a fantastic way to introduce like some of these offbeat characters, or to even kind of tell some of these offbeat stories that just like, you don't need a full length movie and you don't need a full length show on it, but like run a few of these specials that, you know, around Halloween or during, you know, certain, you know, events, holidays or whatever. Like, I think this is a great way of introducing some of these characters. And like, as you can tell too, like this story was very well done. It was super fun to watch.
For a 54-minute special, like it was incredible how great the story was and how they tied everything up. Right. I thought it was fantastic. Mark, what were your thoughts on this special presentation?
I could piggyback on all what Zane said. I'd also give it a 6 out of 6. I went into this only knowing one character from the trailer, and that was Man-Thing. Which, you know, if you know your comic books, Man-Thing came out 2 months before Swamp Thing did in the comics, because it's DC, Marvel have basically the same character. But in this case, Marvel had it first, so there it is.
There you go.
But yeah, I knew basically nothing. I knew about Werewolf by Night, but I'm not like, you know, heavy into that. I knew the blood thing, you know, I've heard the Bloodstone stuff, but like knew nothing about that. But yeah, it's like cinematically, like, yeah, this is great. You got dropped into this world, you know, it's with MCU, I guess, but dropped into this scenario, and you know, got a pretty good introduction, kind of like catching up with what's going on, what this thing that they're fighting for, and that monsters are involved. And I wish I didn't see the trailer, so I didn't know who the werewolf was going to be. But yeah, it's it hit all the tropes for horror and scary stuff, and I wouldn't say it's overtly scary, but if you saw the trailer, you might think it might be. But yeah, I had a good time. And I don't think who's ever negatively talking about this, like, just doesn't get film in general. So,
and honestly, I have heard very, very little negative feedback on this special at all. Like, and I'm pretty active on Twitter, especially, which there are plenty of negative opinions to go around most of the time. But I've only seen a few tweets that people, you know, weren't a fan of this production. So, but I want to just reiterate the same thing as you guys have. I thought this was fantastic. 6 out of 6 for me. Infinity snaps for Werewolf by Night on the
Haven't had
Infinity
one of
Bros
those
podcast.
in a bit.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. Max has been totally ruining our vibe the last like year.
That's what wanted
Is he even anything a 6 out of 6 on the podcast for like when was the last thing I think he did? I don't even remember. We'll
I think
have
he's
to-
been giving some of these She-Hulk episodes 6 out of 6. But
which is
don't call me
interesting.
that. He's loving it.
He really is loving She-Hulk, which is great for him. That's awesome. But yeah, and as a non-horror fan, I mean, I watched the trailer and I thought it looked fantastic. And I'm, again, not much of a horror guy. Like, I enjoy playing horror games, and I enjoy the occasional like slasher, film or thriller movie. But I would not consider myself like a fan of the horror genre. But this was fantastic, amazing production. Like, just the way they handled everything in this presentation was incredible to me. And I want to see more of these as opposed to the Disney Plus shows that they've been putting out.
Right.
Honestly, like if they can put this much into this special production, I'd rather have them spend all of the money that they were going to spend on a Disney Plus show on one of these. Like if it can be this well produced every single time, because I feel like we haven't been getting that level of production in these Disney Plus shows. So I thought it was amazing. Loved, like, I was like, because I'm not a horror guy, I was thinking of giving it a little bit lower of a rating, but the more I think about it, there's nothing that I can really say that's bad about this. Like
Right.
everything about it was like incredible. So I'm like, even though it's not my jam necessarily, I can't knock it. It's fantastic. So
Right.
I would absolutely love to see.
Well,
more
especially
of this, for sure.
anything that gives us a live action Man-Thing, where Man-Thing actually looks
my gosh.
fantastic.
Yeah, you looked
Like
great.
I was just wondering, and even just ends up stealing the show. Like at the end when he grabs the chick and just roasts her, and then
Right.
Elsa's just staring at him, and he just like shrugs, just like
Yeah.
what? You're just
was
like that's brilliant.
His
Werewolf by
powers
Night was
are
a
ridiculous.
perfect. Yeah.
All
they
right,
are-
like he's just
yeah,
that absolute perfect ridiculous character. Because I was reading some of his backstory too, just like the original part of it was they were creating a serum to try to like counter or try to create like the Captain America serum, but like his basically was a serum that countered all like chemical components, but then he crashed his car into a swamp, which is supposedly a mystic part of the swamp, and then you come to find out that's where the nexus of all realities is, and you're just like it just becomes like this character that you're just like, hey, we're just gonna make this super weird, super bonkers, and we're gonna make Man-Thing the guardian of it all. And you're just like, all right, and then here he is in Werewolf by Night.
He got captured to be killed. So
yeah, you're just
that's
like,
also
oh,
wild.
okay, all right, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
but it is weird that they kind of went the monster route on him, because technically he's not a monster. That's why it's weird that the Bloodstone affected him, whereas like Jack Russell actually becomes a monster, but he becomes a werewolf, whereas Man-Thing got like mutated into that, whereas he's not like an actual cryptid. But I guess I don't know the properties of how the Bloodstone's going to work in the MCU.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
You're really
I would
gonna
have to
question
do
the
more
Bloodstone
research.
properties.
I would have to do more research on the Bloodstone, because I'm probably in the same boat as you, Mark. Like I've heard of Werewolf by Night, I've heard of Man-Thing, and I've heard of Elsa Bloodstone, but like I know pretty much nothing other than their names of all of these characters. So like I don't know anything about the Bloodstone. I don't really know how it works, but I think that made this even better for me, because I'm not like sitting there questioning, oh man, like does that really how that works in the comics? Blah blah blah, all that stuff.
Another thing I feel like came from this is like all those hunters had confirmed kills, and this is drawing back to not the last episode She-Hulk, but the one before with like the Matador and that guy. You know what I'm talking about? How many creatures are on Earth? And there's at least 200 plus to kill.
Right.
Yeah.
So
true.
Which I think that's something, the other articles I've read, that's what some people are saying, to kind of give a fresh perspective of the MCU. Go through this whole monster side of Marvel that they've never explored before. Like, yeah, you have your main stuff of everything of, you know, from Secret Invasion and all these main storylines, but give us more of these monsters that are hiding in in plain sight, because then you can start giving us, you know, these type of Midnight Suns type characters, your Elsa Bloodstones, bring in, you know, you're introducing Blade, you bring in Ghost Rider, like a lot of these that are kind of these monster hunter type characters, because like this works perfectly for these one-shot type things. Like, yeah, give us these monsters that are just hiding, you know, in plain sight in different things, and like there's so much you can do with that.
Gail Garcia Bernal was Jack Russell, which Jarrett pointed out last week. Peak Marvel, a werewolf named Jack Russell, like just peak 70s Marvel. Wonderful. Laura Donnelly as Elsa Bloodstone, with the kind of the main ones. Harriet Sansom Harris as Verussa, and Carrie Jones played Ted or Man Thing. Rick Wasserman as the narrator. Those are kind of mostly the main ones, but man, like fantastic cast. Like just the gentleman, Gail Garcia Bernal, who played Jack Russell. I absolutely loved him. I thought he was fantastic. Yeah, and Laura Donnelly as Elsa Bloodstone, like, stole the show. Like,
oh, he was very charming.
Amazing casting in these characters. So I thought those guys did a fantastic job.
I would say, think about horror movies. He was in the M. Night Shyamalan movie Old just recently. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Just like last year, I think it came out.
So he's got a few under his belt there. That's pretty cool. My favorite part of this whole production was it being in black and white, and like they perfectly, oh man, like I'm not even a horror fan, but like this is exactly how I would imagine a horror movie being from, you know, whatever, 1930 or 40 or something like that. Like this is exactly how it is, but it still had like the modern dialogue and modern blend of humor, and just like everything about that was just like, this is fantastic already. Like if you don't like the whole horror genre or like even the story of this show, you have to at least appreciate the production level that went into this presentation. Like it blew me away. And everything's black and white. The Bloodstone is red. Like it sticks out. Really cool aspect of that. And then at the very end,
that was cool how they shot that.
It kind of comes into color, and it was just like, okay.
Yeah, like when Elsa basically possesses the Bloodstone, and then basically everything turns to color. Like that was such a cool touch. Yeah,
super awesome. That's been my favorite. And I want to point out too. So this was directed by Michael Giacchino, who is a fantastic composer. I think for me specifically, when I found out he was directing this, I was like, why? Like, what? I didn't know anything if he had like directing experience. So I like looked it up. He had directed like a couple short like films and stuff like that. So it was like, what? Why and number one, like he's got connection. He composed the Spider-Man trilogy, the MCU Spider-Man trilogy. So he's got like connections there. But I was like, how does this guy get into this role to being the director of Werewolf by Night? So
like, why not like someone with the direct, especially for it being a Marvel show that they want like probably done pretty well. Like you would think like maybe for horror, they go out and get a horror director.
Yeah.
Like a Guillermo del Toro, like someone like that to be like, hey, we need a short, do what you want to do. He might've made it a little too scary for the people, but you know, it would have been fun.
Yeah, that would have been a wild MCU production.
But like because I thought the same things. Like this dude really doesn't have any directorial experience.
Yeah,
but I don't know if he had
what it comes down to is that he had to be the guy that made the pitch for this, right? Like,
yeah, right.
He must have made the pitch to Marvel, and they're like, "Wow, this is a fantastic idea.
This
like,
is the movie
we might have to run with it." Yeah, that's like the only way I can think of how he became the director of this project.
Or he was partners with the screenwriter for this too. So like, you know, like, hey,
maybe
we like they came in together as the idea, like, hey, this is what we want to do. So, because I'm sure, you know, Marvel probably has an idea what they want to do with stuff like this, but I'm sure they still hear pitches for all these characters. and then decide what to bring in and who to bring in. So at this
Right.
point, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Zane, what did you think of the blend of so first of all, back up a little bit. Marvel has come under fire in the past couple of years, probably, for their level of CGI in their movies and their shows, even down to like how they are treating their production team. There's been a lot of stuff leaking. Some people coming out and saying that like they're not getting paid enough, they're not getting treated well, blah, 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 all this stuff. What did you think of the blend of practical and CGI effects in this production?
I thought it was done really well. Like, I think it needs to be more of that. I mean, obviously you got someone like Man-Thing, like that's going to be a little more CGI than practical, but like there are shots you can have more practical effect. But I wonder how much it being in black and white affected that at all. Whereas, like, I know especially in regards to what you're doing with Werewolf by Night, being in black and white, like I think you can kind of, it blends in some of the actual practical effects a bit. But like with a movie like this, when you're trying to capture that old school horror feel, like you have to use practical effects. Like if that would have been CGI, like, or all CGI, it wouldn't, I don't think it'd be as good as it was. That's just one of those characters and how they're presenting it and how it was shot, that like you have to have those practical effects. And I wish that's something Marvel would go back more to, of having more practical effects. Like I think that sells more of a story.
Well, and we're seeing it more now in these shows like House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. Like they're using a lot of practical effects that make their sets and costumes look incredible. And nobody is watching those shows and being like, "Oh, the CGI sucks. Like this is terrible."
Right.
And obviously they have to use CGI because there's dragons. Like they have to use CGI. But
right.
like nobody's watching those shows.
Wait, those dragons aren't real?
Are you telling me Man-Thing wasn't real?
Yes, I'm sorry to tell you, Mark, but Man-Thing was in fact CGI. Actually, in that last shot where Jack Russell is sitting by Man-Thing, that had to be a practical suit of Man-Thing, because that looked incredible. And they like do the close up on his face, and like it looks like it's a real suit. It looks real.
And especially for something that doesn't have like a moving mouth, really.
Yeah. Right.
Like that's where, you really could use a practical suit for that for the most part.
Right. And I'm assuming they used CGI for most of his moving shots because that just makes more sense. But like, I mean, that suit looked, I thought that suit looked, I would have to look up more like as that scene and make sure that it is in fact like a practical suit, but it sure looked like it to me. But yeah, I thought the blend of practical and CGI was fantastic in this. And they use like this, and again, like I feel like almost bad. I'm like going back to all this stuff, not being a huge horror guy, but like they use this great horror trope with Jack Russell or Werewolf by Night of like they didn't show a lot of him at all. It was more so like they used kind of the suspense, the intense scenes, the shadows, and they only showed a couple shots of his face in the whole entire presentation, and mostly used just like outline silhouettes, like that kind of stuff, which, I mean, that's such a classic, awesome horror trope. Like, back in the day when they like just didn't have the practical
CGI or like the money.
They didn't have CGI. They didn't show a transformation. They literally could not like make the stuff that they needed to make for these horror movies. So they just like they had to use their creativity and imagination to show, like portray these monsters and these like things that were happening in the movie. So I thought it was awesome.
Trust us, bro. He's changing into our world.
Just trust us.
Trust us.
Yeah, but man,
we'll see him and he'll be full werewolf. Just don't worry, right?
Just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But then we actually did see a few shots of him, and it was full practical, like Teen Wolf like face. I thought that just fit the awesome campy vibe of it.
They went that route for like a human werewolf face versus like him turning into an
actual wolf
that stands on its legs. Like I agree. I like, that's what people might gripe with. It's like, oh, it's too campy looking. But it's like, that was kind of the point of this whole presentation.
Literally is the point.
It's that old school, the Wolfman. Yeah. Like that was the whole point of it.
Yeah, type of looking werewolf. So yeah,
totally agree. Yep. Man, I thought this was I think I mentioned this in the chat too. I think this was probably my favorite project since Shang-Chi. Honestly,
yeah, you said that.
Like I've enjoyed most of what Marvel has put out in Phase 4, but I think this was something special, and not just because it's a special presentation. It's
when
because
you said that, I thought about special. This. Do you think I felt like there was more? They did better action in this 50 minutes than they've done in so many different properties.
I agree. Yeah.
In the last year, like I just feel like this was so well executed. With both them entering into the maze labyrinth, the hunt the monster, and then the final fight scene like in the entryway, the chasm or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe Zane, you're onto something with like black and white. Like they had to probably think about that and film that differently with them knowing that it was going to be in black and white.
Oh, you totally film it differently in black and white.
Right, exactly. So like. I gotta believe that like they I mean obviously took that in consideration when they're doing the fight choreography and such as well, but like I mean I think you're totally onto something there, because the last great incredible action that we've had in the MCU was definitely Shang-Chi. Like that we had an incredible action and like kung fu in Shang-Chi, and I would even go back to Falcon and Winter Soldier, where that's the more like typical MCU action, but like that had great action as well. I would even say because it's funny that I was talking about this with my wife Kelly, is I would also throw Hawkeye, even though Hawkeye's lower on my list. I feel like that had some good action scenes closer to the end, but you're right. It did have some good stuff,
but like there was more action in this 50 minutes, top tier action, than there was in all of Miss Marvel. And I will fight anyone about that.
Oh, yeah. I agree. Yeah. I agree on that. You might have to fight Marvel or Marvel. You might have to fight, let's see, Jarrett. Jarrett was really high on Miss Marvel. And I believe Scott loved Miss Marvel as well. So those are the guys you got to fight.
I will fight both of them if I have to.
Bring it on. We'll arrange something.
I wonder part of that is it's just simply because of the fact that this was, 55 minutes, so it's like it had more time than a just regular Disney Plus show episode, but it, obviously it's shorter than an actual movie, but like,
do you think
like it actually kind of had time to develop some of that stuff?
Do you think Mahershala Ali sees this, knowing his, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I just think this was like going into it, like they kind of knew, like, hey, you already had this self-contained story, so it was like you didn't have to go into as much exposition and background into making this. You get right into, all right, here's everyone showing up, here's a hunt, let's go.
No dicking around, we're fighting.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like right to the business.
Right. I mean, they literally brought everybody in, explained exactly what was going to happen, and they're just like, go, just all right, there we go.
So is that maybe something that a lot of the other Disney shows have been struggling with, of too much backstory, and just maybe needs a little bit more of just like,
or a simplification of it? Because I think like what we've seen with these Disney Plus shows specifically is that they're trying to cram a lot of story building and background into 6 relatively short episodes of TV.
Do you think they're trying to do that because they don't have 10 years?
Yeah, and that's part of it. And I'm sure, a big part of all of that, like COVID and, all the halting of production and all, I'm sure it played a big part in all of those Disney Plus shows. But it just, I think it definitely hurt those shows. Like they're trying to cram so much into the amount of time they had. And I think there is a little bit of a difference because these Disney Plus characters they're going to be main players in the MCU down the road. And that might not be the case with the characters in this special presentation. Maybe we get Elsa Bloodstone in like Midnight Suns way down the road, or even maybe Jack Russell is involved in that too. But like, I mean, these are relatively minor characters that are in the scope of the MCU. Plus, this is so different from what we're used to in the MCU. And I mean, you mentioned it, Mark, for what was our most recent? Is She-Hulk? I think you were talking about She-Hulk on a recent episode, but like, it's a breath of fresh air in the MCU. Like, this is something new that they did very, very well. And I think, I mean, Marvel nailed it on this one. So looking forward here, I did mention Elsa Bloodstone potentially could be, in like a Midnight Suns type of deal when we eventually get that movie. Zane, do you think any of these characters are going to be seen in the mainline MCU continuity, or are these kind of niche? Is this a niche special presentation that we're not going to see again?
Well, I mean, obviously they're very niche characters just because it's coming from this horror, this dark side of Marvel. Not that it's necessarily straight up, super terrifying horror, but it's from this era of Marvel that had a very specific category. Like yeah, you get, because it's this whole section of just these old monster movies, these tropes of, the werewolf, the mummy, Frankenstein, like all these old monsters that through these old stories kind of got brought into Marvel. But like, you didn't read these stories as a Marvel fan. You read them as a horror icon fan. And so when you're bringing these in with, they're going against Dracula or they're going against this. And so I think these characters have a niche audience, and I think they can like make appearances further down the line. But I think this is something Marvel can use of like, hey, this is the perfect opportunity. This is the perfect cast or these characters to use for these special presentations. Because like, I don't know if you're going to have enough to actually make a ton of mainstream movies or shows, but like this, we just got introduced. Yeah, Elsa Bloodstone is someone who could definitely, I think, make further appearances. But like Man-Thing, Jack Russell, like I don't think you're going to have a ton of ongoing things. But like now you give a further show with Elsa Bloodstone, and then all of a sudden be like, hey, we need backup from someone. And then Elsa Bloodstone goes, hey, I know a couple people. And then all of a sudden you get an appearance by, Man-Thing and Jack Russell again. Well, then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, this is fantastic because those two had a lot of chemistry. Like, I don't know if there's enough to base that on there, because like with monsters and the monster hunting, that's such a flavor of the week type show setup as well. So it's just like there's its own sub genre to it all, but like there's a lot that they can do there. But it's not. I don't think it's ever going to necessarily hit the mainstream.
Right. Mark, do you think this has a future in the MCU, or is this a dead end?
I would say that would depend on what you kind of want from the characters. Like, are they going to be involved in Blade somehow? Or are we creating like a monster universe in MCU? Which then leads to question, are we getting too many characters in the MCU? And will that be too confusing for some people to kind of like pinpoint where everyone's going to be?
I think just pulling them fully into the mainstream MCU definitely would get a lot of negative feedback for sure.
Like,
but I think, honestly, like I said, I'd rather see these shorter special presentations than. I don't know. I guess he'll like join in with the rest of the Avengers to fight Kang in Secret Wars. Hey, Man-Thing might have something to say about that. I mean, like, Kang coming for the nexus of all realities at some point,
right?
So, maybe he get involved. Who knows? Well, guys, it has been an episode filled with lots of good stuff. lots of great things to talk about. So any last comments on Werewolf by Night or on She-Hulk episode 8 before we close out the episode?
I got nothing.
All right. Good. And Mark's being attacked by ghosts in his home.
Yep,
so
being attacked by ghosts, I'm delayed.
So if you guys,
I feel like it's 25 seconds.
it's kind of a long way. So if you, the Infinity Bros universe, have any comments about Werewolf by Night, tell us what you think about it in the Discord on the Infinity Bros universe, or you can talk to us about it on social media. Tell us your thoughts or email infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. It has been a blast. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you so much for making us a part of your day. We love you 3000. Have an awesome night. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.